I held out my hand with the ring in the center of my palm, cold and heavy, and watched as her eyes roamed the small object. There were no words at that moment, just the muffled sound of the hotel's air conditioning and the screaming silence between us. She lay still, almost as if she had stopped breathing, but her eyes, so familiar to me, told another story. It was no surprise. It wasn't anger. It was guilt. A guilt that corroded and drowned any attempt at an apology. She knew. And, most importantly, I knew that I knew. And that? She finally spoke, but her voice shook, barely coming out. "What did you expect?" I replied. My tone was colder than I had planned, but it didn't matter anymore. I was there to close a cycle, to put an end to what had already ended long before I had the courage to admit it. I didn't need to scream. The pain in her eyes was enough. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. As I left that room, with the sound of the door closing behind me, I could still hear the echo of her words, "Please don't tell him. Him. Our son." The reason I lasted so long. The reason I forgave the small lies, ignored the unexplained absences and accepted the vague excuses. The reason I forced myself to believe that she was still the woman I chose to love. But now, the only thing left was the truth, raw, cutting, and inescapable. I took the elevator down like I was on autopilot, reliving the last few months like flashes in my mind. The late-night connections, always with excuses about last-minute meetings or trips. The hidden messages, which she deleted too quickly. The smiles that were no longer for me. I saw it all repeat itself like a broken tape, but only now did I realize how blind I had been. Or maybe I just didn't want to see. I held on to the iron bar of the elevator, feeling the weight of the ring in my pocket now. She hadn't returned it. She hadn't said a word other than that desperate plea to protect her son from knowing the truth. But what disturbed me most was the question that never left my head: how would he react? He adored his mother. It's always been like this. She was his hero, the perfect woman. And me? I was just the father. The provider. The man who never lacked anything, but was also never enough. As I drove home, my phone vibrated incessantly. I knew it was her, but I didn't have the courage to look. Instead, I let the thoughts take over. Did she think about what it would do to him? Did he consider, for even a second, that he was destroying not only our marriage, but his vision of family? Or did she think she could keep up appearances forever? But the most painful question was another: what if he took her side? The moment I parked the car in the garage, the knot in my stomach tightened. He was at home. And as I opened the door, I already knew I couldn't hide anything. There was no way to act normally after what had happened. And perhaps that was what I feared most, not the possibility of losing my wife, but the possibility of losing my son as well. "Father?" His voice echoed through the room, and I turned to face him. He was there, standing still, with that confused and innocent expression. For a moment, I felt like a coward. What if I just said everything was fine? That nothing had happened? That his mother was exactly who he thought she was? But I knew I couldn't live with that lie. Not after all. "We need to talk," I said, and saw his smile fade. The words came out before I could stop them, and when I finished telling him what had happened, not going into too much detail, but making it clear enough, I saw something break in his eyes. First, it was denial. Then, anger. And finally, tears. "It can't be true," he said, but his voice no longer held conviction. "I'm sorry," was all I could say. And I really felt it. I felt for myself, for him and, in a way, even for her. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that I had opened a wound that might never heal. He stood up suddenly, took out his cell phone and started typing. For a moment, I thought I was texting her, but then I realized she was calling. When the call went to voicemail, he threw the phone on the couch and stared at me. You shouldn't have told me, he said, his voice low but full of hurt. I couldn't lie to you. So what do I do now? Do I pretend none of this happened? Do I look at her as if she were still my mother? She's still your mother. No. It is not. And that's when I realized. Her betrayal hadn't just broken my heart. He had destroyed his. And as much as I wanted to fix this, I knew there was no way. What happened in that hotel wouldn't stay between me and her. It had spread, like a crack in a mirror, reaching everything around us. But the worst part? I knew this wasn't the end yet. Welcome to the channel where the truth behind the lies is exposed in a raw and impactful way. Here, we never support or romanticize betrayal. Our stories are fictional, but they carry a real and powerful message. Betrayal destroys homes, lives and hearts. Get ready to dive into an intense narrative, full of emotions, twists and painful truths. Hold on tight, because what you're about to hear could change the way you view trust, love, and loyalty. Now, take a deep breath, and good story. Michael adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror for the third time, trying to hide the uneasiness he felt. The reflection showed a man in his early 40s, still with a warm smile and a steady gaze, but now carrying something different, a weight. Maybe it was the tiredness of the last few weeks or just a reflection of years of uninterrupted routine. He turned around when he heard light footsteps coming down the stairs. Anna appeared in that blue dress he always praised, her brown hair falling in waves over her shoulders. She looked untouchable, as if time had taken pity on her beauty. It still awakened something in him that was difficult to explain, a mixture of pride and insecurity. She smiled when she saw him standing there, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Ready for dinner? Her voice sounded soft, but Michael noticed the hesitation. Always. He tried to return the smile, but he knew he couldn't. They left together, and on the way to the restaurant, Michael kept his hands on the steering wheel more firmly than necessary. The silences between them had become more frequent. They weren't uncomfortable, but they weren't comfortable either. They just existed, like a subtle reminder that something had changed. Dinner passed without any major events. They talked about his work, the projects Anna was developing at the company where she worked as marketing manager and, of course, about their son, Ethan, who was about to graduate from high school. Michael held on to these conversations because they were safe. Talking about Ethan was easy, talking about them, not so much. However, no matter how hard he tried, Michael couldn't shake that feeling that something was wrong. He noticed it in the small details, in Anna's averted glances when he tried to deepen the conversation, in the way she used her cell phone more often than usual, and in the lack of that glow that used to light up her face when he talked about the future. But he didn't want to fuel paranoia. There was no reason for that. They had built a life together, overcome challenges and celebrated achievements side by side. Anna was the woman with whom he shared dreams, plans, and memories. She was his partner, his confidant. Still, the sensation persisted, like an uncomfortable hum in the background of a melody. When they returned home that night, Michael stayed in the living room, looking at the photos on the shelf while Anna went up to her bedroom. There were travel records, family holidays and happy moments that seemed so close and yet distant at the same time. He pulled out one of the photos, his favorite, taken in a park during a trip on their 10th wedding anniversary. Anna was laughing, with Ethan on her lap, and Michael had his arm around her. They seemed invincible. But now, looking at that image, Michael wondered when everything had started to change. Had it been recent or something he just hadn't noticed growing up over the years? Upstairs, Anna was sitting on the bed, holding her cell phone. She typed quickly, erased and typed again, as if searching for the right words for something important. He stopped for a moment and looked at the ring on his finger. His mind wandered to the early years of their marriage, the romantic dinners, the unexpected surprises, the nights they laughed late into the night like two teenagers in love. But things change. Responsibilities increase, the demands of work and life take their toll. And suddenly, what was once a priority becomes part of the picture. Anna knew that, but she also knew there was something more. Something that she tried to push to the back of her mind and forget, but that, in moments like this, resurfaced with force. She deleted the message for the last time, placed her cell phone on the bedside table and lay down, but it took her a while to fall asleep. Meanwhile, Michael remained in the room, holding the picture frame as if it were an amulet against his fears. He knew he needed to talk to Anna, that he needed to understand what was happening. But part of him feared the answer. What if it was just him? What if it was all in your head? The next morning, the routine continued as usual. Anna left early for work, leaving behind only a hurried kiss and an almost automatic "I love you." Michael watched as she walked out the door, feeling emptiness spread through his chest. He tried to concentrate on his work, but his mind kept returning to her expressions, to the silences and lame excuses of the last few weeks. When Ethan returned from school that afternoon, he found his father lost in thought. "It is good too?" asked the boy, throwing his backpack on the sofa. Of course, Michael replied too quickly, but Ethan didn't seem convinced. The son was always perceptive. He got it from his mother, Michael thought. "I have to finish some work, but can we order a pizza later?" Ethan suggested, trying to cheer him up. Michael nodded with a weak smile, but as soon as he was alone again, he picked up his cell phone and opened the messaging app. He thought about calling Anna, asking how her day was, but decided against it. Instead, he scrolled until he found the name of his longtime friend, David. "I need to talk. Shall we have coffee tomorrow?" The answer came almost immediately. Of course. What there was? Michael stared at the screen for a few seconds before responding. "I just need to vent. See you at 10 a.m. After sending the message, he felt a little lighter. But deep down, I knew that this meeting would not bring answers, just more questions. Meanwhile, Anna was at work, but her mind was wandering. Her boss had asked her to stay late to finish a presentation, but she knew she could have finished sooner. Deep down, I was avoiding going home so quickly. When he finally left the office, the sky was already dark. She stopped in the parking lot for a few minutes before starting the car, feeling the weight of that decision she had already made, but still couldn't accept. And as she drove back, Anna tried to find a way to continue pretending that everything was fine. Little did she know that, at home, Michael was already starting to put together the puzzle that would change everything. Michael felt the smell of coffee invade the kitchen as he arranged the dishes on the table. It was Saturday, and the morning brought a different silence. Ethan was still sleeping upstairs, and Anna had said the night before that she was leaving early for a meeting out of town. He didn't question it. He just nodded, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling that grew in his chest every time she mentioned work. The kettle whistled, interrupting his thoughts. He turned around, poured the water into the cup, and sat down, staring at the empty table in front of him. The next few hours seemed to promise nothing more than a long day of waiting. But in fact, Michael had already made a decision. He needed to confront his fears, he needed to understand what was happening before that doubt destroyed him completely. He took out his cell phone, opened the tracking app they had installed years ago to monitor Ethan when he was still little, and felt his hands shake as he typed Anna's name. The blue circle indicated its location. She was in a hotel. Michael stood up suddenly, feeling his heart racing. It could just be a meeting. It could be a lunch with important clients. It could be anything, but it didn't seem like it. Anxiety consumed him as he grabbed his car keys. He tried to think of every possible logical explanation on the way there. He tried to convince himself that he was being irrational, that Anna would never do something like that. But the signs had been there, accumulating for months, forming an invisible network that now suffocated him. The hotel was on the other side of town, discreet and modern. Michael parked the car in front of the entrance and stood there for a few minutes, watching people come and go. He was about to call her, but something stopped him. Perhaps the fear of hearing her voice and realizing, from her tone, that his suspicions were right. With heavy steps, he entered the lobby and went to the reception. The attendant smiled politely, but Michael ignored her friendliness. "I need to know if my wife is here." "Anna," he stopped before saying his last name, feeling the lump in his throat tighten. "I'm sorry, sir, but we are unable to provide information about our guests." "Look, I just want to confirm that she's here. It's an emergency." The receptionist hesitated for a moment, but before she could respond, Michael saw something out of the corner of his eye. A glass door opened next to the elevator, and Anna appeared. She was laughing. Michael froze. For a second, time seemed to slow down. Then, he saw who was next to her, the boss. The man touched her arm with familiarity, and the look they exchanged was enough to shatter any illusion Michael was still trying to maintain. He felt the ground disappear. The laughter, the touching, the closeness, everything seemed so natural between them that Michael was sure this wasn't the first time. Anger rose like an out-of-control fire, but he took a deep breath, trying to maintain control. "Not there. Not like that." Anna stopped when she saw him. The smile disappeared instantly, replaced by a panic she couldn't hide. "Michael." His name came out as a whisper, but the guilt was evident. The boss looked from one to the other and backed away slightly, as if he knew this wasn't his fight. Michael clenched his fists and took a step forward. "So that's it?" His voice was firm, but there was an undeniable pain behind the words. Anna opened her mouth to respond, but couldn't. She looked at her boss, then at Michael, as if looking for a way out. "Please, let's talk somewhere else." "No," Michael shook his head. "You've already talked enough." The boss mumbled something about needing to leave, but Michael didn't take his eyes off Anna. The silence between them was deafening, and he knew that any words spoken at that moment would be empty. There was no justification. There was no explanation. She finally tried to touch his arm, but Michael backed away. "Don't touch me." Anna swallowed hard, and tears began to fill her eyes. "It's not what you think, it is not. Because from my point of view, it looks exactly like that." His voice trailed off for a moment, but he continued. "You lied. And now it all makes sense." Anna looked around, noticing that some people in the lobby were beginning to notice the tension. "Can we get out of here? Please?" Michael hesitated, but nodded. She guided him to the parking lot, and the two of them stood in silence beside his car. "I can explain, I don't want explanations. I want to know how long it has been." Anna lowered her head, and he noticed that she was shaking. 6 months. The answer hit like a punch. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to absorb the impact, but all he could feel was the emptiness spreading inside him. "I ask you, Anna, at what point did it stop being about us? At what point did I stop being enough for you?" She didn't respond. He just cried, covering his face with his hands. Michael took a step back, as if he needed room to breathe. Everything he thought he knew about their marriage, about the life they had built together, now seemed like a lie. "I'm leaving," he said finally. "I don't know what will happen after this, but now I need distance." Anna tried to get closer again, but he raised his hand, stopping her. "Don't try. You have already made your choices." He got in the car and left without looking back, leaving Anna in the parking lot, broken and speechless. On the way home, Michael felt his hands shaking on the steering wheel. The silence in the car felt heavier than ever, and he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. But what he didn't know yet was that betrayal was just the surface of something much deeper. Something that would change their lives forever. Michael didn't sleep that night. The image of Anna in the parking lot, her teary eyes and raw confession, replayed like an endless echo in his mind. 6 months. He was trying to process the weight of those words, but it was as if each attempt took him to a darker place. The betrayal consumed him, but what hurt most was knowing that he had failed, as a husband, as a partner, as a man. When the sun rose, he was already dressed, sitting on the living room sofa. The silence in the house was suffocating. Ethan went down the stairs, still drowsy, and stopped when he saw his father staring into space. "Good." Michael turned slowly. "We need to talk." The tone of her voice made Ethan stop, hesitant. Something in the father's face said that this was not an ordinary conversation. They sat at the table, and Michael took a deep breath before starting. "Me and your mother," he swallowed. "We are not well." Ethan's eyes narrowed, searching his father's expressions for answers. "What happened?" Michael hesitated. The word seemed stuck in my throat. "She betrayed me." The silence that followed was crushing. Ethan blinked a few times, as if trying to understand what he had just heard. "That can't be true." His voice was almost a whisper. "I wish it weren't." Ethan stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. "You're lying." Michael felt the blow, but remained calm. "I didn't want to tell you like this, but I thought you needed to know the truth." "The truth?" Ethan took a step back, his eyes filling with tears. "The truth is that you are destroying this family." The pain in his son's voice cut Michael like a blade. He stood up and tried to get closer, but Ethan backed away. "She's my mother," he shouted. "And I'm not going to sit here and listen to you talk about her like that." Before Michael could respond, Ethan walked out the door, leaving him alone in the kitchen. His son's reaction was a deeper blow than he expected. Michael knew it would be difficult, but he didn't imagine Ethan would react that way. He sat down again, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. Hours later, Anna appeared at the door. Her red, swollen eyes showed that she hadn't slept either. "Where is Ethan?" Michael looked up. "It went out. After I told him." Anna's eyes widened. "Did you tell? What did you expect me to do? Would you continue living this lie?" She ran her hands through her hair, visibly desperate. "I was going to tell you. I needed time." Michael laughed, but there was no humor in his voice. "Time? You had 6 months. I made a mistake, Michael. I know I made a mistake. But I didn't want to destroy our family. But it destroyed it." Anna opened her mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Ethan entered, his face marked with anger and tears. "You lied to me." Anna turned around, surprised. "What?" "I went to your boss's office. I asked for you. He said you were off today." Michael stood up slowly, feeling his stomach turn. "What is he talking about, Anna?" She tried to explain herself, but Ethan continued. "I called you several times, and you didn't answer. So I went to the hotel. I saw your car there." Anna's face paled. "Ethan, listen to me, you lied to me too. It made me think that the problem was my father, that he was making all this up." Anna started to cry. "I never wanted to hurt you. But it hurt," shouted Ethan. "And now I don't know who you are anymore." The room was silent. Anna knelt down in front of her son, but he took a step back. "Don't touch me." Michael watched the scene with a broken heart. He wanted to protect his son from that pain, but he knew it was too late. And then, Ethan spoke the words that would change everything. "I hated you, Father. I hated you for thinking you were destroying our family. But now I see that she was the one who did it." Anna looked at Michael, desperate. "Don't let him talk to me like that." Michael took a deep breath. "I'm not going to tell him how to feel. I'm his mother. And I'm her son," shouted Ethan. "But I don't know if I can be any more." Anna collapsed, crying on the floor. Ethan looked at his father and, without saying anything else, left again. Michael sat, watching the woman he loved for so many years broken before him. But, even though he still felt a hint of compassion, he knew that this was just the beginning. Because there was something more. Something Anna hadn't told her yet. Something he felt between the lines, but still couldn't decipher. And when he finally discovered the truth, he knew everything would change once again. Michael stood in the kitchen, the sound of Anna's muffled cries echoing through the house. Her breathing was short, uneven, and yet he couldn't get closer. Something inside him had broken, something that couldn't be repaired. But no matter how much he tried to emotionally distance himself, Ethan's words kept echoing in his mind. He climbed the stairs slowly, as if each step was pulling him down. When he arrived at his son's room, he found the door ajar. Ethan was sitting on the bed, staring at the floor, his eyes still red. "Can I come in?" Ethan looked up but didn't respond. Michael came in anyway and sat down next to him. The silence lasted longer than expected until Ethan spoke. "I don't know what else to do." Michael felt the weight of those words. He wanted to be strong, he wanted to have the answers, but he didn't. "I don't know either." His voice was lower than he intended. "But what I know is that we will get through this together." "What if I don't make it?" Ethan raised his head, revealing desperation in his eyes. "I always thought she was perfect, you know. And now it seems like nothing I thought was real." Michael held his son's shoulder, squeezing lightly. "She's still your mother. That doesn't change." Ethan shook his head. "Changes everything." Michael didn't insist. Instead, he stood beside him, letting silence fill the space until Ethan stood up abruptly. "I need to get out of here. I can't take this house anymore." Michael nodded, but before his son left, he called him back. "Just promise me one thing." Ethan Perot. "What?" "That you won't make any decisions while you're angry." Ethan didn't respond, but his pause indicated he understood. Then he left, leaving Michael alone with his thoughts again. The night arrived slowly, weighed down by a suffocating weight. Anna remained in the bedroom, locked, and Michael remained in the living room. He tried to convince himself that that conversation had been the worst moment, but he knew it wasn't true. Something inside him said that there was still more to come, and it didn't take long for that feeling to be confirmed. Around 10, Anna's phone started ringing. Michael looked at the device abandoned on the coffee table and saw the name on the screen. He was her boss. He let it ring until it went to voicemail, but seconds later, a message came. Michael didn't want to look, but his eyes were caught by the glow of the screen. And before he could control himself, he picked up the phone and unlocked the screen. The message said, "I need to talk to you." Does he know everything? Michael's blood ran cold. The anger returned with a vengeance, but this time, there was something more, an urgency. He walked quickly up the stairs and opened the bedroom door without knocking. Anna stood up scared. "What are you doing?" Michael held up the phone. "Who is he to you?" She swallowed hard but didn't respond. "He speaks." He approached, and Anna backed away, as if afraid of what he would do. "He's nothing." "Nothing?" Michael laughed, a bitter sound. "Then why is he asking if I know everything?" Anna's eyes filled with tears, but this time he didn't feel sorry. "Answer me." "Because," she hesitated, and Michael felt his stomach turn. "Because what?" "Because Ethan is not your son." Time stopped. Michael blinked, as if he had heard wrong. "What?" Her voice trailed off. "It was just once. Before we got married. I was confused, and he appeared. But I didn't know. I swear I didn't know until years later when he came back to work with me." Michael staggered back. "Did you know? And you never told me?" "I could not. I was afraid of losing you. I loved you. I still love you." He raised his hand, asking for silence. The head spun. "Does Ethan know?" Anna shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I never told. And I didn't want him to know like that. Michael felt his chest tighten. Ethan. Everything he did, everything he sacrificed was for that boy. And now. He left the room without saying a word, heading down the stairs as if the floor would give way at any moment. The pain was unbearable. Every memory, every moment seemed to melt away before him. He grabbed his car keys and left without looking back. He drove aimlessly, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. He needed to think, he needed to breathe, but the images kept coming into his mind: Ethan's smile when he learned to ride a bike, the tight hugs after football games, the deep conversations on difficult nights. How could I look at him now? How could I pretend that nothing has changed? When he finally stopped, he was in front of Anna's boss's office. Michael got out of the car, feeling his blood boil. He didn't know what he would do when he saw him, but he needed answers. The receptionist was already gone, and the lights were off, but Michael knew he was there. He knocked hard on the door, and after a few seconds, the man appeared. Michael? Without thinking, Michael pushed him inside and closed the door behind him. Did you know? The boss raised his hands, trying to calm him down. Let me explain, did you know or didn't you know? Yes. He lowered his hands. I knew. Michael felt his body shake. And you let this continue? I tried to stop. I swear. But she what? She didn't want you to find out. She was scared of losing you. Michael approached, his eyes fixed on the man in front of him. And now? What do you want from her? The boss hesitated, but then lowered his head. I love her. Michael took a step back, as if he had been hit again. What about Ethan? The man looked up. I just want to be part of his life. The words echoed in Michael's head. He turned and left before he lost control. When he got home, the light in the living room was still on. Anna was there, waiting for him. What did you do? Michael didn't respond. He just looked at her, and in that moment, he knew that nothing would be the same again. Michael didn't sleep. He sat in the living room armchair, staring into space as if looking for answers where he knew there were none. Anna's confession still echoed in his mind, each word like a blade sinking deeper. Ethan wasn't his son. He repeated the phrase silently, as if saying it out loud would make it more real. But it was already real. The pain in the chest, the lump in the throat and the feeling of betrayal left no room for doubt. He felt like part of who he was had been ripped away. Everything he built, every decision, every sacrifice made in the name of his family, now seemed like a cruel lie. Anna was in the room, or at least that's where he thought she was. I hadn't gone after her. I couldn't. Not after everything you found out. He needed time, space to breathe, but he knew that running away wouldn't solve anything. Ethan was still outside. Your son. Or maybe not anymore. When the clock struck 3 in the morning, Michael got up and picked up his cell phone. No message from Ethan. He called, but the call went straight to voicemail. Tried again, but nothing. The silence of the phone increased the anxiety that was already burning in his chest. He took the car keys and left, driving aimlessly. He searched the nearby streets, went to the house of his son's friends, but no one had any news. He stopped at a gas station and texted, "Please tell me where you are. I just want to know you're okay." The answer came minutes later. I am fine. I need time. Michael let out a sigh, but the anguish continued. He knew he couldn't force a conversation. Ethan needed to process everything, just like he did. Returning home, he found Anna sitting on the stairs. Her eyes were swollen, and she looked at him with a mixture of guilt and fear. Did he respond? He asked, his voice weak. Michael nodded. He said he needed time. Anna covered her face with her hands. I ruined everything. Michael felt the anger return, but he forced himself to maintain control. Yes. You ruined it. She looked up at him, but there was no more pleading. Just acceptance. I loved you. Always. Her voice shook. But I was afraid. When I found out, Ethan was already ours. I couldn't take it away from you. Michael took a step back. You didn't take anything from me. The pain in his voice overflowed. You took everything away. You took away the truth. You made me live a lie. I know. She let the tears fall, but Michael no longer felt sorry. And now? He crossed his arms. What do you want from me? I want, she hesitated, but her voice trailed off. I want to fix this. Michael laughed, but the sound was empty. To repair. There's no fixing it. She stood up and took a step towards him. I'm not asking you to forgive me. Just, don't give up on him. Michael felt his stomach turn. Do you want me to pretend like none of this happened? That I continue to be his father as if it didn't matter? It's not about pretending. Anna shouted. It's about loving. You love him, don't you? The question caught him off guard. Of course I love it. So that's what matters. He needs you. More than ever. Michael opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He knew she was right, but how could he just move on? How could he look at Ethan and not see the face of the man who destroyed his family? Anna continued. You were his father from day one. You were the one who stayed awake the nights he had a fever. You were the one who taught him how to ride a bike and who helped him with his homework. That doesn't change, Michael. He turned his face away, trying to hold back the tears. But it changes for me. Anna took another step. Then fight it. For him. Michael closed his eyes. I wanted to believe I could overcome this, but everything felt so wrong. The next morning, Ethan returned home. He entered without saying a word and went straight to his room. Michael followed, feeling his heart racing. We can talk. Ethan looked at his father, his eyes full of hurt. About what? About how I'm a mistake. Don't talk like that. Why? Isn't it true? I'm a mistake, aren't I? Michael sat on the edge of the bed, trying to find the words. You were never a mistake. Then why does it feel like I am? Ethan stood up, facing him. You can't even look at me the same way. Michael felt his chest tighten. Because it hurts. Me too. Ethan crossed his arms, trying to hold back the tears. I just wanted everything to be like it was before. Me too. Silence filled the room until Ethan spoke again. Am I your son? The question hit him like a blow. You will always be my son. Even now. Michael stood up and placed his hands on his son's shoulders. Nothing changes that. Nothing. Ethan collapsed into his father's arms, and Michael held him, feeling the tears he was fighting to hold back finally fall. Anna watched from the doorway, unseen, with silent tears streaming down her face. Later, when the house finally fell silent, Michael sat on the couch, reflecting. He knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. I knew I could never erase what happened. But for Ethan, he was willing to try. And for the first time in days, he felt a spark of hope. However, that hope carried a weight. Because despite his decision to move on, Michael knew he would never forget what was taken from him. And he knew that, even if he was willing to forgive Ethan, the wound left by Anna might never heal completely. Michael parked the car in front of the house. Light rain ran down the windshield, distorting the streetlights. He stayed there for a few minutes, holding the steering wheel tightly. The conversation with Ethan still echoed in his mind. His son's words, filled with pain and confusion, had been like knives, but they also brought clarity. Michael knew he needed to move on, but that didn't mean forgetting. He walked through the door and found Anna in the living room, sitting on the sofa with a cup of tea in her hands. She looked at him but said nothing. He seemed to have accepted the fact that words could no longer remedy what had been destroyed. "Did he sleep?" Michael asked. Anna nodded. "I was exhausted." Michael took a deep breath and sat down in the armchair across from her. The silence was heavy, but this time, there was no need to break it. They both knew that this moment was just the beginning of the end. "I've decided I'm going to stay with Ethan," Michael said finally. Anna looked up, surprised. "What?" "He needs me. And I need it." "And me?" Her voice broke. Michael stared at her. "I can't trust you anymore." "I tried, Anna. I tried to convince myself that we could get through this, but I can't." She placed the cup on the table and covered her face with her hands. "I loved you. I still love you. I loved you too. But love cannot survive lies. No to that lie." Anna sobbed, but Michael didn't move. He felt compassion, but he also knew that this compassion was not enough to save them. "What will happen now?" she asked, looking up, her eyes swollen. "I'm going to ask for custody of Ethan. I will fight for it. He's my son." Anna shouted, but her own voice wavered. "And you lied to him his entire life." Michael stood up. "You're going to have to deal with this." Anna was silent. She knew she was losing everything. The next morning, Michael took Ethan to lunch. The two were calmer, although the tension was still present. Ethan fidgeted with his cell phone, avoiding eye contact. "Do you want to talk about yesterday?" Michael asked. Ethan shook his head. "Not yet." Michael respected the silence. He knew his son needed time. But as they ate, Michael noticed something different in Ethan's eyes. There was a determination there, something he hadn't seen before. "I want to be with you," Ethan finally said. Michael looked at him, surprised. "He is sure." "I have. I don't want to be with her. I can't trust her." Michael swallowed hard. "I knew this would be difficult for Anna, but I also knew that I needed to prioritize my son." In the following days, Michael began the separation process and asked for custody of Ethan. Anna tried to fight, but the confession that she had lied about her paternity weighed against her. In the end, the judge granted shared custody, but Ethan made it clear that he preferred to live with his father. Anna fell into a cycle of depression. He lost his job and, over time, began to isolate himself. He tried to get closer to Ethan, but he remained distant. Anna's boss, who had promised support, disappeared from her life as soon as the scandal came to light. With no job, no family and no allies, Anna was left alone. Michael, on the other hand, found a new perspective. He and Ethan began to rebuild their relationship, finding strength in each other. But despite moving on, Michael still carried the scars of what had happened. Months later, he met Rachel, a childhood friend who had moved back to the city. She brought lightness and understanding, something Michael didn't know he needed until he found her. Ethan also became close to her, seeing Rachel as a support figure who helped him deal with the pain left by his mother. Little by little, Michael began to believe in love and trust again. Anna, on the other hand, remained stuck in the past. He tried to ask for forgiveness several times, but neither Michael nor Ethan were ready to give him that chance. Time passed, but the shadow of that betrayal never completely disappeared. Michael learned to live with it, transforming pain into strength to protect his son and build a different future. And now, looking at his son sitting next to him in the car, laughing at a silly joke, Michael knew he had made the right decision. Still, part of him would always wonder how it could have all been different. If you've made it this far, leave your comment saying what you thought of this story. Your opinion is very important. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more impactful stories like this. And remember, cheating is never the answer. Until next time.